Sonic R is the final game I haven't discussed in depth this year as we try to cover all of the Sega Saturn Sonic games. The reason I've left Sonic R to last is it's one that I've covered before and wanted to make sure I spent some time getting my refreshed points right. As always, I'd like to initially mention official Sega Saturn magazine and the affable Rich Ledbetter again. He was, as usual, a vehement fan of any game that exploited the Sega Saturn, and Sonic R was turning out to be another such game. John Burton at Traveller's Tales sat down with Rich multiple times to discuss the ins and outs of the engine he was developing, from what he called misting to the transparency system he'd developed and even the water in the game. Sonic R featured high technology on the Sega Saturn, and for working fans of the magazine up into a fever pitch again, Rich found his way into the credits of yet another game. So, when discussing Sonic R, it's pertinent to discuss technology, as it's one of the prime examples of a game that very clearly shows a Saturn working very hard to make pretty things happen on the screen. But let's discuss the game first. Sonic R is a racing title at its core, with elements of other games in the series thrown in for good measure. You're on a track, but you're not constrained to the track. There's an adventure element to the track design in Sonic R which was fresh and original at the time, and no one had ever really done anything like this before. Rings became a currency used to open shortcuts, while new elements such as the Sonic coins found their way into the game and are used to unlock new races such as Tails Doll and Metal Sonic. The characters all control well, and have a unique feel to them to use when they're on foot, as you really do feel in control. There are only 5 tracks in the game, which may not seem like much, but I've never really fully understood this criticism, because the tracks are big and explorable and replete with things to find and shortcuts to explore. The first few times you run through Regal Ruin, you may not even realize a hidden path behind the first ramp leads to a coin and a huge shortcut. This is the fun of Sonic R. The game is challenging, because unlike something like Mario Kart 64, you're tasked with doing more than just driving around a track until you win. You have to race around a track, and you have to find 5 coins to unlock Metal Sonic. Or you're racing around a track, and you've got to find the Chaos Emeralds on Radical City, but you just can't figure out where the other one is. These extra goals end up extending the playtime of the game. And although I can now finish every track with every Chaos Emerald in about 45 minutes, I have been playing this game since 1997 and know it like the back of my hand. You have to think like someone from 1997 playing this for the first time. There's a lot to do and practice to be had before you can unlock everything and truly beat the game, extending the initial playtime by several hours, including the extra modes. In terms of the track design and options on offer, there are forward and reverse versions of 5 tracks of varying complexity. Resort Island is a simple green hill type zone with some water and caves, but nothing too exciting. Radical City ramps up the exploration, with a separate little city street you can explore away from the main track. Regal Ruin has a series of hidden Chaos Emeralds and paths you can find to shave time off your run, and Reactive Factory is a complicated series of ramps, platforms, and submarines with lots of water traps to hold you up. Finally, there's Radiant Emerald, which is pretty, but there's not much to it. After you've raced on these tracks and unlocked their secrets, Traveller's Tales included a few extra modes like the Balloon Hunt, which allows you to wander through environments, really soaking in the lush graphics at your leisure, and even a tag mode. There is actually a lot to do in Sonic R, and a lot of the arguments surrounding the quality of the title tend to boil down to it not having many tracks. In comparison, something like Mario Kart 64 has many tracks. However, it doesn't really mean all of them are well designed or fun to play. Choco Mountain, for instance, is just a big brown rock. How exciting. I'm not looking at starting a fight, but it lends to my point. Perceived brevity is not valid criticism to me when the game itself is good. The logic doesn't bear out. The cool game is wrapped in what is arguably one of the best graphics engines ever produced for the Saturn. The game maintains a consistently high frame rate while generating big, gorgeous environments replete with high-quality textures and outstanding geometry. Everyone remembers the corkscrew track in Regal Ruin and the waterfall in Resort Island. The misting effect, as it was called back in 1997, is employed to stop environmental detail just popping in out of nowhere, and it's very pleasing on the eye. Animation and polygonal design of the characters in the game is also of a very high standard. This is what a pretty game looked like on the Sega Saturn when you had a competent developer on board. There's nothing that looked quite as good as Sonic R that released on the 32-bit systems in 1997 in this category of game. And that's down to style, substance, and texture quality. It's a very visually appealing game, runs at a good clip, and no matter what you might think about the music, it always puts me right back in 1997 and gives me a warm feeling. Sonic R is a milestone game for the Sega Saturn. It proved, once again, that the system was capable of producing beautiful games that didn't feature flat, drab textures that break up when the Z buffer screws up, like another system I know. Despite popular opinion, the facts bear that there's a lot of meat to this game, even if you just want to wander around in balloon mode, soaking up the atmosphere of the levels, or you want to have another go at unlocking all of the characters. I have said before that 1997 was a good year for the Sega Saturn, and Sonic R continued that trend into the holiday period.